I never imagined a volcanic eruption could change our world forever. What will happen in 2025? I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My heart raced as the ground shook beneath my feet. The air was thick with fear, mixed with the acrid scent of smoke. We had lived our lives in peace, nestled between mountains that seemed harmless. But I watched as dark clouds erupted from the mouth of the beast we had ignored for too long. My brother, Theo, gripped my arm tightly, his eyes wide with terror. "What do we do?" he shouted over the roar. I could feel the vibration of his voice in my chest, a worrying pulse of reality. We weren't prepared for this, not for a moment. Families ran past us, faces twisted in panic. The asphalt bubbled under the intense heat, shimmering like a mirage. I thought of Mom, alone at home, oblivious to the chaos unfurling outside. She believed in our safety, in a world devoid of catastrophes. Love wrapped around her life like a warm blanket. Now that blanket was unraveling. We had always joked about the volcano, calling it our sleeping giant. But it had awakened with a vengeance, spewing ash and threats into the sky, blocking out the sun. I felt the weight of dread in my stomach. Would I ever see her again? In the distance, screams erupted. I felt my pulse quicken. The atmosphere buzzed with desperation. "We need to find shelter," I yelled back to Theo. The streets flooded with ash, a thick gray blanket that swallowed everything, making us feel lost in a dream, a nightmare. My hands trembled as they traced the rough edges of debris. Every crack in the sidewalk felt like a warning. And then the sirens blared. They cut through the chaos, a haunting sound that pierced my thoughts. Emergency responders rushed by, faces grim, but I felt powerless, like I was trapped in a cage of smoke. All I wanted was to reach my mom, to reassure her that everything would be okay. But how could I promise her safety when the ground itself was tearing apart? We stumbled upon a gathering of people, huddled beneath a broken awning, eyes wide, lips trembling. I could feel the panic in the air, like a charged storm ready to burst. "Did you hear?" Someone whispered, their voice barely above a breath. "They say it's not just here, it's happening everywhere." A chill ran down my spine. I blinked away the tears that threatened to overflow. I couldn't comprehend it all. Countless lives hanging by a thread, caught in a disaster that felt unreal. I had never imagined our world could crack open like Tisan earthquake of despair, rumbling beneath our feet. With every beat of my heart, the clouds loomed closer, dark and menacing. Time seemed to stretch, suffocating the air around me. Faces blurred as fear swirled in my chest, begging for answers that refused to surface. "What did we do to deserve this?" I whispered, but no one answered. As the first sparks of glowing lava danced down the mountainside, a heavy silence fell. I could feel all the fears converging, like an ocean wave ready to crash. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air thickened with heat and ash, wrapping around us like a suffocating shroud as I turned toward Theo, whose pale face reflected both shock and resolve. In an instant, the din of screams and chaos dimmed as I clenched my fists, dizzy with denial. "We have to go," I said, my voice barely a whisper but resolute. "We have to find Mom. We can't leave her alone." Theo nodded, the fear in his eyes crystallizing into determination. With every step, the ground beneath us felt as unstable as our future, fragile, unpredictable. We picked our way through the rubble, navigating the remnants of a life we had taken for granted. Every glance over my shoulder felt like a promise I was afraid I couldn't keep. As we ventured deeper into the chaos, the streets began to turn into a surreal landscape. The ash floated down like a snowstorm, covering everything in a charred gray. I met the eyes of a woman standing nearby, clutching her child to her chest, a moment of shared anguish connecting us in the madness. "What are we going to do?" she murmured, her voice trembling. I didn't have an answer, but the desperation in her eyes mirrored mine, igniting a flame of helplessness within me. We continued moving, scanning every building for a sign of safety, or at least a chance to escape. But shadows lurked everywhere, the unknown gnawing away at my resolve. "They said the emergency shelters are full. They can't take more people," Theo said, breaking the silence. The weight of his words grounded me in reality. Suddenly, a shriek pierced the air, drawing our attention to a figure struggling beneath a fallen beam. The instinct to help surged through me, but fear threatened to paralyze. Theo looked at me, eyes wide with uncertainty. "We can't," he stammered, his voice quaking. "It's too dangerous." Yet I couldn't turn away. As much as I wanted to find my mother, there was another human in need. I darted forward, Theo reluctantly following. Together we heaved the beam away, revealing an elderly man, his face drenched in sweat and ash. "Thank you," he gasped, voice weak, yet gratitude shimmered in his eyes. I thought I was going to die alone. I felt a flicker of warmth in my chest at the man's words, even as anxiety churned. We helped him to his feet, and he stumbled slightly, leaning against me for support. "I'm looking for my family," he said hoarsely, searching my eyes with a lingering hope. The mantra in my chest echoed louder, "Find Mom. Find Mom." "Are you okay to walk?" I asked, urgency seeping into my voice. With a nod, he gestured toward the nearby community center. "They set up a shelter there. I saw them take my daughter just moments before the ground shook." "Let's go," Theo encouraged, urgency rippling in his voice as we gathered our strength to move again. Together this time, a comforting tether in this unraveling world as we crashed through doors and bolted past frightened faces in the center. The scent of smoke gave way to something more hopeful: warmth, human contact, the glimmer of unity. A small group of people were huddled in the corner, exchanging quiet stories about their loved ones. Candles flickered, illuminating faces that mirrored my anxiety yet glowed with resilience. However, the moment of hope was cut short when a boy, no older than 10, rushed into the center, breathless and terrified. "They're evacuating. The lava is flowing fast," he cried, and time seemed to freeze. For the second time in moments, my heart sank, the reality of our situation crushing down on me. Could our world truly be collapsing? Would that dark shadow consume everything we once knew? A cold river of panic slithered through my veins. I turned to Theo, whose face was a mask of shock. "We need to go. If they're evacuating before I could finish," the ground shook again, this time more violently. The lights flickered and went out, leaving us cloaked in darkness, surrounded only by muffled cries and the echoing fear of the unknown. "Stay close," I shouted, but a roar drowned my voice as the building seemed to tremble under the weight of the eruption still looming over us. Couldn't end like this. Couldn't lose Himi brother, my anchor, and certainly not my mother. Just when I thought despair would swallow me whole, the elderly man squeezed my hand tightly, offering a gesture of solidarity amidst the chaos. In that moment of connection, I realized that our struggles were intertwined. We had to stick together, find strength in the bonds we forged in uncertainty. But then the roar escalated into an explosive cry, tearing through the fabric of the evening. My heart dropped as I remembered the news reports about evacuation routes. And without thinking of the consequences, I shouted, "Everyone, we need to move to the evacuation point. Now!" Before I could form a plan, chaos erupted as people pushed past each other, desperation leading to frantic energy. Exiting the building, however, revealed an even bleaker sight than before. The asphalt was cracked, and flames flickered in the distance. The familiar streets now transformed into a hellscape through the throng. I spotted a familiar silhouette, but before I could call out, it vanished, swallowed by the wave of fear. "Theo!" I shouted, the name escaping my lips like a lifeline. I turned to find him, but the crowd pulled us apart, each heartbeat echoing the growing realization that I might lose him, just like everything else I held dear. And then, amidst the swirl of panic, through the smoke, I heard her voice, Mom's voice. The sound of my mother's voice sliced through the chaos like a beacon, anchoring me momentarily amidst the uncertainty. "Mom!" I shouted, my heart pounding, an electric thrill racing through me. I spun around, frantic, my eyes darting through the sea of terrified faces, seeking her out, while the heat from the fires leapt higher, inching toward our fragile hope that I end that moment of urgency. I reached for Theo's hand, a lifeline tethered between us, but in the flurry of bodies, I inhaled deeply, struggling to remain calm. The surge of people thrust us forward, but all I could think was that her voice was our salvation, ordinary amidst the extraordinary horror. "Mom, where are you?" I pushed my way through the chaos, every shout vanishing into the cacophony. "Please, don't get lost," I yelled to Theo, who was just behind me, his hand tightening around mine. Fear sparked in the depths of his eyes as he nodded, a silent promise that we wouldn't be separated again, even as we waded deeper into tumult. "Over here." The voice was nearer now, a tremor of fear and relief. I followed it through the throng, prayer pouring from my lips, threading hope amid the smothering desperation. Each step was a small act of defiance against the overwhelming tide of uncertainty. Finally, she emerged from the haze, my mother, her expression wild, hair disheveled from the chaos, but her eyes locked onto mine like a vice. "Elena!" she cried, closing the distance in a desperate burst. I surged forward, enveloping her in a fierce embrace, my heart bursting with relief as I held her close, a steady heartbeat grounded in the storm of turmoil. "Are you hurt?" I asked, pulling back to inspect her face, brushing away the ash that layered her skin. She shook her head vehemently, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her brave exterior. "I was looking for you and Theo. I knew you'd be here." I glanced back at Theo, who wore a look of mingled gratitude and relief. We were safe for now, united again in this unfolding nightmare. "We saw the community center," I said, my voice teetering on the edge of overwhelming emotion. "They were evacuating people." Just as I thought we shared a moment of respite, the ground let out a painful groan, and panic surged anew. People surged toward the emergency evacuation vehicles, the beckoning sirens a lifeline of hope against the encroaching chaos. "Let's go, we need to get out of here," Mom urged, her voice rising above the din. We pressed forward, but as we reached the main road, a wall of heat and bright light flared up just ahead. Flames erupted like a monstrous breath, cutting off our escape route. Instinctively, I grabbed Mom and Theo, pulling them back just as debris rained down around us. "No, this can't be happening," I gasped, helplessness colliding with my desperate need to protect them. "We'll find another way," Mom said, her voice steadier than I felt. I nodded, swallowing my fear as I grasped for another plan, searching for any path through the swirling smoke. The world morphed around us into a nightmare landscape, but somewhere amidst the horrors, I noticed a young girl crumpled against the wall, her soft whimpers muffled in the chaos. "We can't leave her," I breathed, glancing at Theo, who hesitated, eyes darting between the girl and the fiery barrier ahead. "People are trying to evacuate," he urged, dread painted on his face. But something within me surged at the sight of her vulnerability. "Please, she can't be alone," I begged, my heart thundering with an urgency that swelled and throbbed. The act of kindness ignited hope amid the darkness. Without waiting for a decision, I rushed toward her. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe. We're going to help you," I said softly, kneeling beside the shivering child, her eyes wide with fear. She looked up, her tear-streaked face a reflection of everything we felt. I offered her my hand, and the girl, against the tide of uncertainty, reached out and clasped it tightly, the simple act of trust sparking something within me. I caught a glimpse of something more than our situation. I traced hope unfurling amidst despair. "Please come with us," I urged gently, glancing back at my brother and mother. Theo was moving closer, his instinct to help outweighing his worries momentarily, while Mom watched with a mixture of pride and fear, uncertainty swimming behind her eyes. But before we could pull her up, a deafening roar pulsed through the air, and the ground quivered beneath us again. The shrieks muffled as it collapsed into the madness around us. "Come on!" Mom shouted, reaching for the girl's other hand. Just as she grasped it, a plume of smoke spiraled upward, and a shadow cast over us like an ominous shroud. I turned, breath catching in my chest as I saw the silhouette of a figure emerging from the haze, significant and towering, moving toward us as if crafted from the same chaos that surrounded us. "Run!" Theo yelled, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. My gaze locked onto the figure, dread pooling in my stomach as recognition flickered a face long gone, thought lost in memories buried deep. "Mom!" Is that I hesitated, unable to find the words, but dread clawed at me, the ominous energy vibrating in the air. The girl screamed, the cacophony of emotions colliding as the figure pressed forward. "Do not let fear rule you," called, voice familiar yet distorted. Reality twisted, and in that singular moment, every instinct told me to flee as everything I knew hung by the thread of the unraveling night. The chaotic urgency spiraled to an unbearable pitch, mingling with the confusion. As I stood there on the brink of disbelief, my entire world set to explode. The figure lumbered toward us, their silhouette forged by the flames and smoke, each step heavy with a mix of anticipation and dread. A surge of memories washed over me. Laughter that echoed in forgotten halls, a voice that had once lulled me to sleep with stories of magic and bravery. But those memories flickered like flames, easily extinguished by the harshness of the present. I could hardly breathe. "Mom, we need to go." Theo's desperate whisper cut through my reverie, but my feet felt like lead. "Elena, we can't stay here." He tugged on my arm, coaxing me to move, but my attention remained ensnared. "Is it really you?" I found the words breaking between gasps, facing the shadow that loomed larger with every heartbeat. The flames danced behind them, an infernal backdrop that belied the warmth of recognition I yearned for. "Don't be afraid." The figure raised their hands, not as a threat but as an offering to calm the storm brewing within me. My heart raced, thrumming with conflicting emotions. Hope intermingled with fear. The voice that spilled from their lips was tantalizingly familiar yet splintered, echoing from a place hidden deep in my childhood. "I'm here for you. Get back." Mom's voice, so fierce in its determination, pulled me from my trance. In its protective urgency, I felt the weight of dread crumble around me, and I grasped the small girl's hand tighter, her trembling frame shaking against my side. I turned, taking her with me, but my gaze lingered over my shoulder. Was this really a ghost from my past, someone I had thought long gone, swallowed by time? I caught a glimpse of pain etched in that familiar face as it stood on the precipice of my childhood, offering something I longed for and feared in equal measure. A bright flash lit the darkness, casting everything in stark contrast, a moment of clarity against the chaos. "We can't waste time," Theo shouted, his eyes scanning for escape routes as the world grew increasingly frantic. From the distance, I could hear sirens wailing promises of safety, edging closer but sounding far removed from this hell. "Come on." Mom steered me firmly, her determination igniting a flicker of bravery within me. Instinctively, I let my feet move, coaxing the small girl alongside us. For every step away, the tether I felt to the figure felt increasingly thin, as though every inch forward brought me farther from answers I had desperately craved. I glanced back one last time, just before disappearing behind a wall of chaos. The figure's anguished gaze pierced through the flickering shadows, a promise hanging in the air unfulfilled, and with it, the shattering realization that I could be walking away from everything I thought I knew. As we rounded the corner of the building, the suffocating heat lessened. The sounds morphed from screams to distant cries, and I dared to breathe again, although the weight in my chest remained. Theo had pulled us toward a narrow alley, and I could see the glimmers of hope from the evacuation vehicles ahead, people climbing aboard, breaths escaping in relieved gasps. "Over there. Now," Mom directed. We hurried along, weaving through the panicked crowd. The little girl, who had been quiet up until now, glanced up at me, her eyes wide. "Will we be okay?" she asked, voice tremulous yet filled with a resilience that prompted me to hold on tighter. "Of course. We'll make it," I whispered, trying to infuse every ounce of conviction into my words. I had to believe ITI had to be the anchor, even as fierce uncertainty churned within me as we emerged onto the main street. I felt the heat dissipate behind us, but the air was thick with the remnants of ash and smoke. People crowded in front of the evacuation vehicles, a restless urgency skimming the surface of their emotions. I could see families huddled together, eyes rimmed with tears, enveloped in the loss of what had once been their safe haven. Then, in the chaos, I noticed movement at the far end of the street, a flash of color against the dull backdrop that surrounded us. A small group was trying to gather people, giving directions, but something about it seemed chaotic and misplaced. "Wait," I pulled back, catching Theos' sleeve. "Isn't that?" Before I could finish, I locked eyes with a figure standing slightly apart from the groups gathered, their brow furrowed as they pushed their way through the crowd. Dressed in a distinct uniform, distinctive but worn, as if they had been fighting the flames just as valiantly as we were fleeing from them. A sense of familiarity washed over me, igniting a glimmer of hope. "Mom, that looks like someone from the community," I stammered, pointing, hope surging through my veins once more. But before I could grab Theo or draw my mother's attention once again, a massive crash ricocheted from behind us, the sound resembling a thunderous roar. The ground quivered beneath us, choking the air with an acrid sense of foreboding. I turned just in time to witness a significant portion of the building we had just escaped collapsing under the pressure of the raging inferno. Ensnared in the moment, I felt my breath hitch, my heart racing anew as large chunks of burning debris fell, blocking the road we'd just traversed. And then, from the dust and debris, a scream broke through the chaos, sharp and haunting, calling for someone. My heart dropped as the chaotic air thickened, and suddenly, I couldn't tell whether I should rush forward or retreat. "Go!" I shouted, launching toward the sound, driven by an inexplicable need to know who was calling amidst the storm. But Theos' grip tightened around my arm, gently pulling me back. "Not that way," he urged, panic giving his voice an edge. I looked back, torn between my instinct to help and my desperate need for safety. In that heart-wrenching moment, the world flickered, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last as uncertainty crashed down around me like the building we had just escaped. And just as I was about to yield to the dread surrounding me, I caught sight of a solitary figure emerging from the dust, familiar, yet only further complicating the storm swirling within. My breath caught in my throat. How could this happen now, amid this chaos? It was unraveling, fading, and the only certainty left felt like it was slipping right through my fingers. The screech of metal and the acrid scent of smoke enveloped me as I tried to piece together the scene before me. My heart raced as I faced the approaching figure, their silhouette momentarily illuminated as they stepped from the tendrils of dust and chaos. A frantic pulse echoed in my ears, each beat a reminder of the weight of this moment, the unbearable tension hanging in the air. "No, it can't be," I whispered, disbelief choking the words in my throat. It was her, standing there, alive among the ruins. "Mom?" Theos' voice trembled, confusion dancing in his wide eyes. But it wasn't just my mother, it was her spirit, her strength made manifest, flickering like a candle fighting against the wind. The realization sent a shiver down my spine. Hope battled with fear, fraying at the edges. "Stay back," a voice roared, startling me. I turned to see a firefighter, sturdy and fierce, standing between us and my mother. His mask covered any hint of empathy he might have felt, but the urgency in his stance was unmistakable. "This area's not safe. Please," I cried out, reaching for my mother, who stood just beyond the veil of protective chaos. "She's right there. We need to help her." But the firefighter only shook his head, his gaze firm, filled with the weight of experience. "You can't. We have to evacuate. We can't risk anyone else being trapped here. People are still inside, Mom." A voice from the crowd called out, and my heart constricted as I saw another familiar figure push through the throng. This time it was Greg, my mother's longtime friend, covered in soot but with a fierce determination lighting his eyes. "Stay away from the rubble," he shouted, his arms outstretched as he tried to make his way through. "No," I cried, panic flooding my voice. "Greg, Don't. But it was too late. He rushed toward my mother, their eyes locking with unspoken worry and hope that felt as tangible as the smoke that swirled in the air. Suddenly, the ground beneath us shook in a tremor that sent a fresh wave of dust spiraling into the air, leaving the crowd gasping as they stumbled back. "Mom, keep moving!" I screamed, feeling the frantic urge of a protector rise within me. I wanted to run to her, to shield her from the impending disaster that loomed, trapped here with the uncertainty of whether we'd ever be truly free again. "Mom," Theo echoed, torn between his own instincts and the immigrant strength drawn from me. Fear flickered in his eyes, reflecting my own terror as we watched Greg pull my mother back away from the advancing flames licking their way through the wreckage. Just then, I heard a soft whimper beside me. The little girl, who had been clinging to my side throughout this chaos, whimpered while staring at the chaos surrounding us. "You're scared," I whispered, crouching down to her level, wrapping my arms around her trembling shoulders. "I am too. But we need to stay strong for them. Can you do that for me?" To my surprise, she nodded, her slate-gray eyes reflecting a flicker of determination. I felt a wave of unexpected warmth for this child, an ember of hope igniting in the tension-filled air. I slowly rose, maintaining my grip on her hand, and steeled myself against the overwhelming urge to break down. "We're going to help them," I whispered to her, and to myself, though my own heart felt like a pendulum swinging wildly between sorrow and courage. The scene before me unfolded like a nightmare. Greg and my mom struggled against the chaos, trying desperately to navigate through the smoke. The firefighter barked commands to the remaining crew, pulling people away from immediate danger even as he, too, eyed the wobbling debris that threatened to claim us all. "Form a line." Another firefighter yelled, galvanizing those who were already gathered. "Get them out." "Mom," I lunged, instinctively moving forward, but the little girl's grip tightened around my hand, anchoring me in place. "Oh, we can't," she insisted, her voice small but firm. "We have to listen." Her words echoed within me, as did the realization that my desire to save everyone could cost more lives than it could save. I took a deep breath, letting her words wash over me like a balm, calming the frantic storm within. As I stepped back, I felt the warmth of her hands strengthening my resolve. I blinked back the tears gathering at my lashes. "We'll find a way, I promise." I turned my focus back on my mother, who now appeared to be edging closer to safety, Greg holding her tightly, an expression of understanding glinting in their eyes. But just as they turned to flee, the air rippled with fatigue, and the building gave one last, ominous groan before a section of the wall collapsed. My heart stopped as dust and debris exploded outward, swallowing them in a cloud of chaos. For a heartbeat, time froze, my vision narrowing to the shadows sweeping through the air. "No!" The scream tore from my throat, but I felt helpless, a prisoner to my own despair. "Wait! Look!" the little girl gasped, tugging my arm through the cloud of choking dust. I caught sight of the unmistakable light of a fireman's helmet high above, a glint amidst the eerie shifting of shadows. The realization dawned there were others still caught there, trapped by fate, clinging to the ashes of chaos. "I can't lose them," I murmured, voice thick with urgency. I met the little girl's eyes, drawing strength from her unwavering gaze. "You stay put. I'm going to find them. Be careful," she called as I pushed forward, tearing through the crowd, determined to reach the smoke that billowed like the grief strangling my heart. The world blurred around me again as dust filled my lungs. I fought against the growing fear that threatened to consume me. Every step felt measured, pounding beneath me like the weight of questions I couldn't bear to ask. Would I reach them in time? Just as I neared the edges of fallen debris, a shout rang out. "Elena!" It was Greg's voice, rough yet filled with desperation. I pressed on, fighting through the haze, knowing there was no turning back. Just as I reached the edge, another resounding crack echoed in the air, scattering my resolution into fragments. The debris shifted ominously, and before I could process, a shadow moved behind Ida, familiar silhouette pulling itself from the remnants. It was her, my mother, emerging through the smoke, a spirit unbroken but blistered by the flames, eyes wide with disbelief. Time stretched like a rubber band ready to snap, Nothing else existed but this moment. Then I sensed a tremor again beneath my feet. Something in the air shifted, and my heart lurched as I watched, horrified, as the building groaned, collapsing further, a tower giving way beneath the tumult of a world unraveling. Not just one, but two figures were behind her, and my senses sparked with a haunting realization as I connected the dots. It was not just my Moth-era new life lay deep within her. A soul entwined in hope, about to flicker into existence at the very precipice of despair. I gasped. The truth crashing down in a terrifying swell. Was I prepared to face yet another loss? As the air grew thick with chaos and uncertainty, I stumbled backward, heart caught between the dread of what might never be and the fierce love for what already existed. "Mom!" I screamed, but the rubble fell, an avalanche of uncertainty, whispering a terrifying truth. I could either reach for her, risking the ruins crumbling to swallow us whole, or stand frozen, suspended in a moment drenched in impending tragedy. Every second felt like a question mark, lingering on the edge of fate, begging me to choose as the world collapsed around us once more. The chaos spun around me like a whirlwind, the dust thickening and obscuring all hope. My heart raced as I stood there, torn between instinct and fear. I caught a glimpse of my mother's face, disbelief and determination etched deeply upon her features. Behind her, the silhouette of the child she carried was just a flicker against the backdrop of destruction, a shadow of a future that hovered precariously on the threshold of existence. "Mom, you have to get out," I screamed, my voice cracking under the weight of desperation. "I'm trying, Elena." "But Greg," she gasped, her eyes darting behind the curtain of debris that separated our worlds. "No, we can't leave him." My spirit surged with the need to protect them. I stumbled forward, adrenaline coursing through me, almost willing the chaos away. Suddenly, a frantic shout pierced through the smoke. "Help! Over here!" It was Greg, his voice strained but carrying a raw urgency that ignited my resolve. "Greg!" I shouted back, the name spilling from my lips like a prayer. My feet moved of their own accord, the instincts of a daughter and a sister compelling me to breach the dangerous gap. "Stay back." The firefighter's voice rang again, solid and authoritative. "We're pulling them out. Back off." But this wasn't just any moment, it was my family. Couldn't stay back. I couldn't be paralyzed by my own fear while they languished in uncertain peril. In that suspended heartbeat, the instincts that kept me in check shattered like glass underfoot. I dashed toward the crumbling walls, my eyes locked onto the flickering light of Greg, moving inside the encroaching darkness. "Hold on. I'm coming," I yelled, my heart pounding as I darted around the crumbled debris, each step feeling more perilous than the last. Dust swirled around me, clinging to my skin, each breath another spire of grief threatening to choke me. Just as I reached the base of the debris, a blast of heat washed over me, a warning of the fire that still roared nearby, consuming everything. "Greg!" I tried to stay composed, but the tremors of uncertainty ate away at me. I glanced back toward my mother, whose eyes beseeched me to turn back, to stay safe. But I could not abandon them. "Keep moving. I can see you," Greg yelled, his voice filled with raw strength. "We're trapped here." A split second stretched on as I felt the ground beneath my feet tremble ominously. Just ahead, the debris shifted and creaked, hinting at an unstable precariousness that had already swallowed too many souls. "Hold on, I'm almost there," I called again, desperate to reach the familiar warmth of his spirit. The scent of smoke filled my lungs as I lunged toward the spot where I last caught a glimpse of Greg. I ducked under a beam, heart hammering as I made my way through the wreckage. I could hear my mother shouting behind me, pleading, but the sound faded into the background, drowned out by the shouts of firefighters urging people back, to evacuate, to safety. Just a little further, I encouraged myself, fighting the tug of fear and grief threatening to swallow me whole. I could almost feel the warmth radiating from their bodies, the bond of family calling me. And then, out of the haze, Greg's hand shot up from beneath a pile of rubble, a desperate signal of hope. "Elena," he called, voice sluggish yet powerful. "Help! I can't." I felt my pulse quicken as I lunged forward, grasping his hand, pulling with every ounce of strength I had left. "I won't let go." "Together," I shouted, feeling the weight of the world pressing down around us. I in that moment. The tremor grew fiercely, a deep visceral rumble that shook the ground beneath me. There was no time left. It had come time to act or be crushed beneath the fallout of fate. My mother's face flickered back into my mind. The child she carried, how could I live with myself if my choice led to their loss? "Let's go," I urged, pulling harder, adrenaline surging through me. "We can do this." But before we could fully escape, the ground convulsed violently, a roar of disaster rising like an untamed beast, sending tremors through everything. The walls around us shuddered. Pieces of the structure began to crumble, spiraling down toward us in a cascade that felt eerily slow yet painfully quick. In that freezing moment, everything fell away. I saw Greg's eyes widen in fear and resolve. "Go. Get out. Now," he shouted with a fierceness that cut through the haze, his voice belonging to a man sculpted by sacrifice. He pushed me back just as a twisted piece of metal fell where we had just stood, crashing to the ground where we might have been crushed out. "Greg!" My screams erupted, a gut-wrenching plea that echoed in my heart while my body remained rooted in horror, desperately trying to grasp the fleeting threads of his strength. But Greg, steadfast and unyielding, held my gaze. "You have to protect her. Promise me." An icy realization gripped me, chilling my veins in ways I never thought possible. The choice to abandon the only source of hope I'd ever known surged before me. With the building moaning and shaking, I felt time condense, faced with one agonizing question. Would I sacrifice my future for the sake of what could be lost today? "Promise," he demanded, the urgency in his voice a desperate plea that seared into my soul. "I promise," I yelled back, tears streaming down my cheeks like hot rain against the chill of despair. "But you can't leave me." And with that, I turned forcibly, rushing towards the distant safety of my mother's voice as rubble continued to rain down behind me. But as I broke free from the cloud of smoke, another tremor jolted the ground. I stumbled and fell to my knees. My gaze shot back to the place where my family still remained, Greg's eyes wide with determination, a guide into the darkness. Then one last thing hit me like a punch to the gut. Had meant the child. The child, what if I lost them both? "Mom!" I cried out as I stumbled back to my feet. "I can't leave." But she was gone, her voice having been swallowed entirely by the chaos of the collapsing world around us. All I could hear now was the sound of the ground quaking and the realization that one side of our existence was rapidly disappearing. With every ounce of strength I had left, I sprinted toward the last patch of safety, desperate to escape the clutches of despair that encircled me like an impending storm. But with another shattering crash, fate turned, a revelation that shattered everything I thought was certain. Peter, the child I had clung to moments before, stood frozen at the edge of the debris, staring wide-eyed at the growing devastation unfolding in front of him. And in that moment, I felt the despair wrap its arms around my heart. I could let go, but at what cost? "Peter, come. We have to move," I called, desperate to reach the frightened child. But dread filled my chest as the ground shifted beneath him, the cracks widening with ruthless precision. "Mommy!" he cried out, a single note of innocence amidst the chaos. The world around us twisted and churned, unyielding in its destruction, and I knew we were teetering on the edge of salvation and calamity. Would we ever escape the inferno? It became impossible to breathe, the weight of reality dawning with malicious clarity. Would I be forced to choose between my present and my future, risking it all for a fleeting chance to rebuild my shattered world? As cracks spread and the walls bellowed one last warning, I held my breath, clutching the memory of Greg, the memory of my mother, and the child yet to be born. My instincts warred against my heart as I rushed toward the only light left in the growing darkness. Would hope take shape in the ashes, or would it be lost forever as the world fell apart? The choice needed to be made, but would I have the strength to bear the weight of it? Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, and in that paralyzing moment between breaths, I glimpsed the fierce determination that ignited within me. Without a second thought, I surged forward, pushing every ounce of fear aside. "Peter, I'm coming," I shouted, my voice almost drowned out by the groans of the collapsing structure. The ground trembled again. Dust kicked up around us, stinging my eyes as I kept my gaze locked on that small figure, the sense of urgency tightening around my chest like a vice. "Hold on just a little longer," I urged, feeling as if I were racing against fate itself. Peter didn't move, frozen like a statue in terror. Fear coursed through me like poison, and I extended my hands toward him, hoping to bridge the gap between us. "You can do it. You have to trust me," I urged, desperately trying to peel away the weight of his fear. In that moment, I felt a tug of warmth behind me, and without looking back, I knew my mother's presence was bolstering my resolve. "Elena, come back." Her voice anchored me, blending with the rising panic in my chest. Shaking off the memory of loss, I pushed through the suffocating dust, my legs moving as if propelled by sheer will. "Peter," I cried, my desperation bringing forth a surge of resolve. "You're not alone. We'll make it out together." Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I glimpsed the remnants of a staircase, precariously listing under the violent onslaught of rumbling earth. It seemed like an impossible hope, but the idea that it could lead us to safety blazed in my mind. I took a deep breath, mustering both my strength and my courage. "Peter," I yelled again, my heart pounding in time with the tremors beneath us. "Follow me. If we can reach that staircase, we might." But before I could finish, the ground bucked violently beneath me, and I stumbled, caught off guard. Any trace of resolve wavered in my heart. I turned, panic spreading like wildfire through my veins as I lost sight of Peter. "No, come on," I screamed, feeling the weight of time pinching tighter. Then, just beyond the crumbled debris and thick smoke, I saw him. The widening cracks beneath our feet mirrored the rift in my heart as I beckoned him forward. "Please, Peter, we need to go." Tears glistened in his eyes, terror paralyzing him in place. Yet behind his fear lay a flicker of recognition, the unspoken bond of trust that resonated through the tumult of chaos. With shaking breaths, he began moving toward me, hesitant but determined. "Good. Keep coming," I urged, the ground trembling beneath me, a constant reminder of the peril we faced. "You're almost there." Every instinct screamed at me to grab him, to pull him to safety, but I couldn't break the distance between us until he took that leap of faith. Before he could reach me, another howl of collapse echoed, the roar of destruction that threatened to swallow us both whole. My heart sank, an iron weight smothering my hope. I reached out, stretching my arm as far as I could, and then, unexpectedly, a large figure emerged behind Peter, a firefighter, covered in soot and grime but alive with purpose. "Get him! Pull him back!" the man shouted, rushing toward Peter with an urgency that matched my own. "Peter, listen to him. Go!" I yelled, the pressure rising as time slipped maddeningly through my fingers like sand. Suddenly, the structure shuddered violently, and the firefighter lunged at Peter, catching him in the nick of time. I felt a rush of relief surge through me, but it was short-lived as the ground opened, releasing a vicious roar that threatened to consume everything in its path. "Move! Move!" the firefighter yelled, dragging Peter toward me just as I threw myself forward, arms outstretched. Grabbing hold of Peter, I pulled him close, my heart racing as the tremors intensified, shaking us to our core. But the firefighter wasn't as lucky. In an instant, a section of the staircase that had promised hope gave way, crashing down behind him and sealing off our escape. I glanced back, horror painting my features as the dust began to settle. The faint outline of the firefighter vanished, leaving only the darkness of debris in his place. "Oh," I gasped, the reality of our situation crashing upon me like a wave. I had feared losing Greg, and now this unwelcome loss plunged another blade deep into my heart. "Let's go," I said to Peter, the urgency of our escape igniting a new fire within me. I clutched his hand, a lifeline threaded through sheer terror. "Stick close," with shaky steps, we moved past the remnants of hope that surrounded us, pieces of a world that might have been, tripping over the very cause of our nightmare. I pressed on, determined that this moment would not be the end of us. We must survive. But I could already feel the numbness creeping in. With each step, the weight of despair was a shroud over my heart. The ground beneath shook with incessant fury, warning us that urgency was our only ally. "Where's Mommy?" Peter's voice trembled, cutting through the haze, grounding me just enough to stave off the rising tide of panic. "I don't know, but we're going to find her," I replied, trying to quell the tremor that threatened to betray my confidence. The harsh roar of our surroundings faded into the background as I focused on him, drawing strength from the innocent spark still present in his eyes. "Well, get through this." As we made our way deeper into the ruins, the boundaries of our hope began dissolving into the gray mist swirling around us. Each turn felt like a gamble against the odds, and the air thickened under the weight of despair. But then through the smog, I spotted a figure. A silhouette enveloped in shadow, struggling along the edges of debris. My heart soared momentarily, believing it could be my mother. "Mom!" I cried, hope flooding my voice. But as we rushed closer, the figure's frail form became clearer, and panic washed over me when I realized it wasn't her, it was a stranger, cradling a child much younger than Peter, their faces smeared with dirt and tears. "Help! They're trapped!" the woman gasped, her voice laced with desperation. "Please!" Torn between the instinct to fulfill a promise to Greg and the desperate pleas from the stranger, I felt a wave of dread crash over me. I pushed forward, mustering the breath to respond. But as I opened my mouth, the ground quaked again, swallowing sound and time alike. Peter clutched my sleeve tightly, sensing my indecision. "Elena, we have to go." His voice wavered between uncertainty and fear. But then I saw a flicker of a child's eyes reflecting the growing shadows, and suddenly, the choice was no longer mine alone. "Well, help," I said firmly, resolution shaping my voice as I turned to Peter. "You stay close." As we rushed to the woman's side, the urgency to act surged forward, a spark of a burden I'd never intended to carry becoming intertwined with our survival and the cascade of chaos. Something shifted within my hope mingled with guilt, the choice between two futures rewriting our existence with each passing second. And as I reached for the child in the woman's arms, another shudder coursed through the ground, shaking not just the walls around me but the fragile roots of my courage. The world spun once again, and in that moment, I realized that hope was a heavy weight that would demand sacrifice from us all. "Hold on tight," I yelled, heart racing as we pushed forward, driven not just by the desire to survive, but by the realization that the threads of our fate were dangerously intertwined. There could be no letting go of the past, nor of the promises lost. The truth hung heavy in the air as we plunged deeper into the depths of uncertainty, and the walls of our destinies began to close around us. What awaited was a darkness entwined with hope, yet I could not fathom the depths to which we would be pushed. But as I reached for that child, I knew one thing for certain. In this descent into chaos, the choice for survival off one life over another would always strain against the weight of love. The rubble around us felt like a cursed maze, constricting as we maneuvered through the remains of what was once our sanctuary. Each step echoed with the cries of families torn from their loved ones, a symphony of heartache that filled the air. I held onto Peter's hand tightly, our fingers interlaced as though we could hold onto hope with sheer strength alone. As we approached the woman with the child, I could see the fragility etched into her features, the way she held the tiny body close, as if to shield it from the world that had suddenly turned monstrous. Panic consumed me momentarily, but I shook it off. There was no time for self-doubt, not now. "We're going to get you out," I promised her with a confidence I didn't quite feel, but I needed to believe it with every fiber of my being. "What's your name?" "Lila," she gasped, her voice cracking. "This is Marcus." She angled the child toward me, revealing a small, soot-streaked face that peeked out from beneath tangled hair. His gaze met mine, wide and frightened, but there was a flicker of trust within those deep brown eyes. "Okay, Lila. We need to move quickly," I instructed, trying to maintain a calm demeanor that I desperately struggled to embody. For all I knew, any hesitation could spell doom. Peter clung to my side, his own expression a mirror of confusion and concern. I glanced over my shoulder, the air thickening, and an uneasy sensation settled in my gut. "We need to go," I urged, stepping into action, but just as I about to lead them onward, a rumble shook the ground beneath us with an insatiable growl, a deep foreboding that echoed the fears in my heart. "Shoo. It's okay. It's okay," I whispered to Marcus as I gently coaxed him from his mother's arms, cradling him against my chest. "You're safe." But even as I spoke, doubt gnawed at me. "Where's Mommy?" Peter whispered, his eyes darting around nervously, and I felt the sting of vulnerability pierce through my resolve. I didn't have answers for him. "Well, find her," I replied, my voice coating the promise with a thin layer of strength, but internally, I battled the whirlpool of uncertainty. Lila took a deep breath, and I could see the resolve returning to her eyes. "We should stick together. I know a way out. Follow me." As we embarked on our hurried getaway, visions of my mother danced before Meher's laugh, her unwavering strength. I desperately hoped she was searching for me just as I was for her. Each echo of debris falling behind us served as a reminder that we might not have much time left. Navigating the treacherous tangles of broken walls, I felt Marcus shiver in my arms, and in that moment we were no longer just strangers. We became intertwined souls, bonded by shared fear. I glanced at Peter, whose brows knitted in confusion, yet behind it, I detected resolve. Together, we inhaled courage through the chaos. "Stay close," I whispered to him, anchoring myself to the innocence that radiated from him, even amidst the turmoil. As Lila guided us down a narrow passage, her urgency intensified, and just as we began to hope we might find a way out, the ground trembled violently again. A cloud of dust erupted around us, dark and ominous, blinding me just long enough for panic to creep back into my veins. "Go," Lila shouted, pulling us all forward, and the instinct to survive kicked in deep within me. I pushed onward, clutching Marcus against my heart, as we hurtled into the exclusive arms of futility. Somewhere along the way, I lost track of time. Each second bled into the next as we ran desperately through the labyrinth. Footsteps echoed behind us, a reminder that we were not alone in this hell. I could feel the others trapped under the weight of this disaster, their voices muffling into hopeless murmurs. But then, Lila stumbled, and in the chaos, the child I held squirmed. I barely caught the glimpse of growing shadows against the walls. I gasped, pulling both Lila and Marcus close to me. What? But before I could finish, a blinding light exploded from behind us, framed by desperation and darkness, crashing through the cavernous void, illuminating an exit. My breath caught as I discerned the outline of freedom washed in light, illuminating our path, yet uncertainty flickered in the pit of my stomach. "Move!" shouted Lila, her voice commanding, the kind of force that shocked me into action. We bolted toward the blinding brightness, my heart racing while shadows loomed ominously behind us. The moment we surged toward the threshold, my foot snagged on something unseen, and I tumbled forward, yanking Marcus along with me. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribcage as I landed harshly, skidding across the floor. "No!" Lila screamed, but I couldn't let go of Marcus. My skin burned with primal instinct as I clung to the child tightly, shielding him from the imminent danger that loomed close behind us. Just as I rolled to regain my footing, the ground gave way beneath Lila, the cracks widening, dragging her into an unforeseen abyss. Her eyes widened in sheer horror, and I felt my heart lurch, the weight of despair intertwining with the last remnants of hope. "Grab my hand." I reached out, my voice barely a strained whisper above the cacophony, but there was only silence in response. The world spun again, drawing me into the vertigo of despair as Lila disappeared into the darkness. "Mommy!" Peter cried, horror etched across his face, and I could see the helplessness in his eyes mirror my own despair. "We can't leave her." "No," I shouted, torn between the need to escape and an almost primal instinct to reach into the darkness for Lila. "We have to go." But as I turned, the overwhelming thought of the bonds forged through shared pain flickered back into focus while the shadows of despair danced around me, closing in fast. "We're going to find her. I promise." But in that moment, The ground shook again, more violently than ever, and everything wavered further away from my reach. Whether it were the struggles for survival or the relentless weight of my fear dragging me down, the fissures ran wide, the weight of death heavy upon us. With tears brimming in my eyes, the element of unknowing began to gnaw at my core. The only thing I could manage to hold on to was Peter's hand, a lifeline in the burgeoning chaos. The world around us cracked with shuddering intensity as I felt the walls of my resolve closing in. But deep down, I believed that hope could still find a way through the utter darkness. I would not let it die so easily. Not while we still had each other. "Stay close," I yelled to Peter, and with each burst of instinctual energy, I propelled us towards the light. And as I crossed the threshold into what felt like a wild whisper of freedom, the piercing clarity of possibility and dread merged into one visceral truth. Every single life hung precariously in the balance as I turned back upon the brink. I could only wonder what lay beyond, the final revelation looming just as the ground below cracked and trembled, teetering on the edge of a choice that would forever alter our destinies. The air outside was thick with ash, swirling like shadows come to life, each gust a bitter reminder of what we had just escaped. Light filtered through the thick haze with a strange luminescence, illuminating a landscape I barely recognized. Buildings lay scattered like broken toys, their walls scarred and their souls stripped bare. The aftermath of devastation clung to us, settling in the creases of our clothes and the depths of our hearts. Just a few steps beyond the threshold, and the freedom I had yearned for was both a sanctuary and a haunting echo of what had been lost. I turned back to the entryway from which we had emerged, my heart fractured with the image of Lilith's terrified face slipping from my grasp. But there was no time for the grief to settle. The urgency of the moment pressed heavy upon my chest. "Over there. We can take shelter." I motioned urgently to Peter, whose wide eyes were still searching for the mother we had left behind. I could see the turmoil raging in him, a storm of confusion, fear, and desperation, and it mirrored the torments swirling within my own mind. Where could we go? What awaited us in this new world? We stumbled toward what remained of a building, the structure itself trembling as a low rumble echoed through the earth beneath us. The desolation loomed around us, and I felt the pull of anxiety creeping into my bones. "We have to stick together," I whispered to him, hoping to inject some bravery back into the situation. "No, we can't leave her. We can't." Peter's voice was raw, each word a dagger to my heart. The pain in his voice shattered my resolve like glass. He was a child and shouldn't have to carry such burdens. "We will find her," I promised, the words aching in my throat. "We just need to be safe for now. Please trust me." And even as I said it, I felt the weight of my promise hang over us like a dark cloud, pulsing with uncertainty. Just as we reached the entrance, a figure emerged from the shadows. A man, disheveled and wild-eyed, stumbled toward us, covered in dust and remnants of debris. Within a heartbeat, the sharp edge of fear twisted in my gut. "Who was the stranger?" "Get inside," he shouted, urgency lacing his voice, though I noticed a flicker of recognition in his gaze when he saw me. "You two need to move now." "Who are you?" I demanded, unsure if we could trust this man, this chaotic specter of the world unraveling before us. "No time. The ground's going to shift again any moment. Come on, hurry." He sprang into the shelter, and instinctively I followed, gripping Peter by the wrist. There was little choice. If I hesitated, we would lose the opportunity to find refuge. As we stepped inside, a small group sat huddled together, faces worn but expressions filled with shared resolve. Despite the anguish that bound us all now viscerally, there was an undeniable sense of unity. We were in this fight together. In the corner, an older woman held a child close, her gentle rocking reminding me of Lila. "Are you okay?" she called out to me, a soft kindness piercing through the tumult of my own worries. I nodded sharply, feeling gratitude bloom amidst the chaos. "What's happening outside?" asked the man who had pulled us in. He was pacing, a tension in his posture that made it evident he was barely holding himself together. "The earth is breaking apart," I managed, my voice trembling on the edge of my erratic panic. "There are people trapped." "We just lost." My throat constricted, stinging with the effort not to crumble under the weight of despair. "Listen, we're not safe here," the man replied, now focusing intently on me. "The aftershocks will keep coming. We have to find a more secure place." His urgency coursed into our group like a charge, igniting the flickers of fear that had settled within us. But before I could respond, a deafening noise erupted outside, stealing the breath from my lungs. The building shook violently, rocks careening down heavy upon what remained of the roads, echoing like thunder in the dark. The walls of our temporary sanctuary trembled, and I felt cracks forming in my will. "Back to back. Everyone," he ordered, leading us to form a tight circle. As the world quaked, the sense of connection surged through us, a collective breath held against the storm of chaos. Then, amidst the terror, my thoughts lingered on Lilith's face, her reserved strength nourishing my infernal hope. She was out there, lost but fighting to find her son. Suddenly, a determined voice pierced through the madness. "I can't abandon her. I can't." My own voice, resolute now, surprised me. Light as it was in this harsh rubble, it was the first time I felt clear about my purpose. I thought of Peter. "I have to go back." Peter grabbed my sleeve, his eyes wide as riverbanks. "No, we can't. We'll get lost." I saw the fear balding him as he imagined the darkness taking me away as it did to Lila. But at that moment, I felt a surge of something fierce, almost primal. "I won't leave her," I replied with a tremor in my chest. "She needs us. I am coming with you." The man's voice broke into my thoughts, stealing the words before they could leave my lips. "If we're going back, we have to be quick and smart about it." As he spoke, I felt the weight of every decision fracturing my spirit. But what if my thoughts tangled in doubt, but I had already made my choice? Peter squeezed my hand tighter, trying to reel me back to him. "What about the others? We can't just leave them behind." The tension hung heavy between us, raw and agonizing. The world continued its dance of chaos around us. But somehow, a flicker of hope began to form an ember in the ash. If we could save others, perhaps we could save Lila too. Suddenly, amid the dread, one of the women in the group spoke up. "They'll watch Peter." Her determined gaze met mine, a soft smile that gave me the strength I needed. "Just bring her back. You can do this." The whisper of hope felt fragile against the roar of turmoil, yet I felt the collaborative heartbeat of connection pulse through me. In this shattered world, we were not alone. I nodded, tears pooling, feeling gratitude for every soul sharing this wreckage with me even as uncertainty danced in the shadows. As I took a deep breath, gearing myself for the unknown, I saw the cracks of light beckoning once more. Leaving the refuge of warmth and unity for the hell outside felt terrifying. Yet I knew I had no choice. With a heavy heart but steady resolve, I turned to Peter. "We'll be back, promise." And just as I stepped into the tumult, one lingering thought resonated deep within the pounding chaos. What if, in this swirling calamity, we stumbled upon a hidden truth, something even darker waiting to erupt? Before anyone could stop me, I stepped into the void, determined to unravel the threads of fate entwined so tightly within our lives, teetering dangerously on the edge of hope and despair. The air outside was thick with ash, swirling like shadows come to life, each gust a bitter reminder of what we had just escaped. Light filtered through the heavy haze with a strange luminescence, illuminating a landscape I barely recognized. Buildings lay scattered like broken toys, their walls scarred, their souls stripped bare. The aftermath of devastation clung to us, settling in the creases of our clothes and the depths of our hearts. Just a few steps beyond the threshold, the freedom I had yearned for was both a sanctuary and a haunting echo of what had been lost. "Over there, we can take shelter." I motioned urgently to Peter, whose wide eyes were still searching for the mother we had left behind. I could see the turmoil raging in him, a storm of confusion, fear, and desperation, and it mirrored the torments swirling within my own mind. Where could we go? What awaited us in this new world? We stumbled toward what remained of a building, the structure trembling as a low rumble echoed through the earth beneath us. The desolation loomed around us, and I felt the pull of anxiety creeping into my bones. "We have to stick together," I whispered to him, hoping to inject some bravery back into the situation. "Oh, We can't leave her. We can't. Peter's voice was raw, each word a dagger to my heart. The pain in his voice shattered my resolve like glass. He was a child and shouldn't have to carry such burdens. We will find her, I promised. The words ached in my throat, and even as I said it, I felt the weight of my promise hang over us like a dark cloud, pulsing with uncertainty. Just as we reached the entrance, a figure emerged from the shadows. A man, disheveled and wild-eyed, stumbled toward us, covered in dust and remnants of debris. Within a heartbeat, the sharp edge of fear twisted in my gut. Who was the stranger? Get inside. He shouted, urgency lacing his voice, though I noticed a flicker of recognition in his gaze when he saw me. You two need to move now. Who are you? I demanded, unsure if we could trust this man, this chaotic specter of the world unraveling before us. No time. The ground's going to shift again any moment. Come on, hurry. He sprang into the shelter, and instinctively I followed, gripping Peter by the wrist. There was little choice. If I hesitated, we would lose the opportunity to find refuge. Inside, a small group sat huddled together, faces worn but expressions filled with shared resolve. Despite the anguish that bound us now viscerally, there was an undeniable sense of unity. We were in this fight together. In the corner, an older woman held a child close, her gentle rocking reminding me of Lila. Are you okay? She called out to me, a soft kindness piercing the tumult of my own worries. I nodded sharply, feeling gratitude bloom amidst the chaos. What's happening outside? Asked the man who had pulled us in. He was pacing, a tension in his posture that made it evident he was barely holding himself together. The earth is breaking apart, I managed, my voice trembling on the edge of my erratic panic. There are people trapped. We just lost. My throat constricted, stinging with the effort not to crumble under the weight of despair. Listen, we're not safe here, the man replied, now focusing intently on me. The aftershocks will keep coming. We have to find a more secure place. His urgency coursed into our group like a charge, igniting the flickers of fear that had settled within us. But before I could respond, a deafening noise erupted outside, stealing the breath from my lungs. The building shook violently, rocks careening down heavy upon what remained of the roads, echoing like thunder in the dark. The walls of our temporary sanctuary trembled, and I felt cracks forming in my will. Back to back. Everyone, he ordered, leading us to form a tight circle. As the world quaked, the sense of connection surged through us, a collective breath held against the storm of chaos. Then, amidst the terror, my thoughts lingered on Lila's face, her reserved strength nourishing my infernal hope. She was out there, lost but fighting to find her son. Suddenly, a determined voice pierced through the madness. I can't abandon her. I can't. My own voice, resolute now, surprised me. Light as it was in this harsh rubble, it was the first time I felt clear about my purpose. I thought of Peter. I have to go back. Peter grabbed my sleeve, his eyes wide as riverbanks. No, we can't. We'll get lost. I saw the fear balling him as he imagined the darkness taking me away as it did to Lila. But at that moment, I felt a surge of something fierce, almost primal. I won't leave her, I replied with a tremor in my chest. She needs us. I'm coming with you. The man's voice broke into my thoughts, stealing the words before they could leave my lips. If we're going back, we have to be quick and smart about it. As he spoke, I felt the weight of every decision fracturing my spirit. But what if my thoughts tangled in doubt? But I had already made my choice. Peter squeezed my hand tighter, trying to reel me back to him. What about the others? We can't just leave them behind. The tension hung heavy between us, raw and agonizing. The world continued its dance of chaos around us. But somehow, a flicker of hope began to form an ember in the ash. If we could save others, perhaps we could save Lila too. Suddenly, amid the dread, one of the women in the group spoke up. "I'll watch Peter." Her determined gaze met mine, a soft smile that gave me the strength I needed. "Just bring her back. You can do this." The whisper of hope felt fragile against the roar of turmoil, yet I felt the collaborative heartbeat of connection pulse through me. In this shattered world, we were not alone. I nodded, tears pooling, feeling gratitude for every soul sharing this wreckage with me even as uncertainty danced in the shadows. As I took a deep breath, gearing myself for the unknown, I saw the cracks of light beckoning once more. Leaving the refuge of warmth and unity for the hell outside felt terrifying. Yet I knew I had no choice. With a heavy heart but steady resolve, I turned to Peter. "We'll be back, promise." And just as I stepped into the tumult, one lingering thought resonated deep within the pounding chaos. What if, in this swirling calamity, we stumbled upon a hidden truth, something even darker waiting to erupt? Before anyone could stop me, I stepped into the void, determined to unravel the threads of fate entwined so tightly within our lives, teetering dangerously on the edge of hope and despair. Together with the man, I moved through the nightmarish remnants of the town. Each step sent vibrations through the ground, reminding us that danger was not just near. It was circling like a predator. "Stay close," he urged, leading the way through crumbled structures. Taking care not to provoke the shifting earth further, I focused relentlessly on the goal. Find Lila. The memory of her urgency slipped through my thoughts, reminding me she might still be searching desperately for Marcus. We rounded a corner, and the chaos erupted around us, a roar of collapsing walls resounding behind us. But we pressed on, moving toward the shadows cast within the wreckage of once familiar streets, and suddenly, that chilling voice broke through the din. "Help! Is anyone there?" The sheer desperation in her call ignited every instinct. "Lila!" I shouted, surging forward despite the gnawing fear lurking just beneath the surface. "Stay low," the man urged, but I could barely hear him over the din of my frantic heartbeat. We moved like hunted shadows through the smoke and debris, eyes scanning for anything that resembled safety. As I pushed through a pile of rubble, I saw a hair-off flicker of hope amidst the chaos. Lila was crouched against a wall, deformity of anguish etching itself into her face, panic enveloping her. "Marcus!" she cried out, her voice laced with despair. "Lila!" I rushed to her side, breathless with relief but also fraught with urgency. "We're here to help you." But time darted around us with wicked speed, and I sensed the walls of our impending fate tugging tighter around us. "Help him," she choked out, panic thickening her words, and suddenly all tensions, pervading my heart, sharpened into singular focus. Marcus was trapped under a thick beam, his frightened eyes reflecting a familiar terror that I couldn't abide. "Lila!" I called, determining to pull the beam back. "Help me!" She grappled with the mass like it was a weight embedded in her soul. It creaked but didn't budge, and my chest thudded with urgency, the clarity of conviction shaking me. "We can do this. Together!" I shouted, the vibrations of fear merging with newfound resolve as we pushed against the weight of the crumbling past. The world beyond held no promises. It teetered precariously on its precipice. Finally, we heaved together, muscles straining, and the beam shifting in increments until it slid away enough for Marcus to bolt free, his small figure collapsing into Lilith's arms. "My baby!" she cried, both terror and relief blending into one overwhelming emotion. A smile broke across her face, but there was barely time for breath before the ground shook violently beneath us. "We have to go now," the man insisted, shoving us toward a path that illuminated through the chaos looming beyond. I pulled myself into focus. "This way. Hurry!" I shouted, just as pieces of debris rained down around us. Lila gathered Marcus tightly as they raced behind me. We darted through broken walls and ash, the remnants of a once vibrant city holding their breath, desperate to shield us from the aftermath. And still, as we emerged into the open air, shame crushed around my heart when I thought of those left behind. We surged beyond the edge into the unknown, thrown into desperation as our breaths mixed with the ash, together but still rattled with uncertainty. Tears pricked at my vision, threatening to blur both the path ahead and the weight of secrets still lingering behind. "We did it," Lila whispered, disbelief lining her voice as she held Marcus tightly, savoring the strength of love wrapped around them. Yet beneath my pride lay an inner conflict. What lay ahead felt cloaked in doubt. Together, we had escaped one hell, but the thought of the lives unraveling behind us made me anxious. I turned to the man guiding us, searching for an anchor in this vast ocean of uncertainty. And in that moment, as our hands tightly clasped, I realized that while we had each faced our own storms, our stories threaded together in resilience. Each heartbeat painted a shared story, a glimpse of hope buried deep beneath the chaos that could guide us forward. Releasing my grip, a surge of strength washed over me. There would be challenges ahead, but we were alive together. Perhaps we could forge a new path, one shaped through connection and love, carved onto the wings of shared dreams. As we moved into the twilight of possibility, I stood resolute, feeling the stirring force of unity that tethered us between desperate cries of fate and the haunting whispers of loss. But what awaited us would forever be worth the fight. Somewhere far beyond this chaos, possibility and hope soared as the twilight deepened into night, the kinds of possibilities built by those who dare to believe they can rise again. And even in complete darkness, the light of our hearts still remained unyielded. The world, fractured yet beautiful, whispered the most powerful secret of all. Love always finds a way, even in the ashes of despair.